Good evening and welcome to our last Autism 200 of 2020. It's been a crazy year and we are ending it on a positive note in my view. My name is Jim Mancini. I am a speech language pathologist at the Seattle Children's Autism Center, and it is my pleasure to describe a little bit about what we're going to be doing tonight. As always, we have been, we strive to be able to provide various perspectives within and from our autism community. And this particular presentation has been a long time coming, and we are here to really present perspectives from different cultures, different communities in our state, in our community. And how it's going to work is we're going to have folks from 3 different organizations. The one is the Somali Health Board. We're going to have Fartoon Mohammed and Amal Yassin starting us off. And then we have Tan Kirkpatrick and Levin Tran from the Vietnamese Family Autism Advisory Board and Hope Central. And then finally, Sandra Urite and Adriana Benavides from the ARC of King County. So very excited to have this. And I'm going to stop talking so that we can listen and hear all about different perspectives from our interesting communities around Washington. So Fartoon Mohammed and Amal Yassin, I'm going to let you take it away. And just give me a heads up when you want me to change the slide.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jim. I really appreciate you inviting us to this platform. My name is Fartoon Mohammed, and I am one of the program manager at Somali Health Board. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Somali Health Board. Sorry, it's taking a little while. So Somali Health Board was found back in 2012. It was mainly found by Somali health professionals and volunteers that were concerned of the health disparities that disproportionately affected the new immigrants and refugees within the King County, with the ambitious goal to eliminate and reduce the health disparities. And then with that, let me give you a little background of the Somali community. So the next slide, please.
Okay.
Somali is located right at the Horn of Africa in East Africa, right next to Ethiopia and Kenya. Somali students started arriving back in the early 70s and 80s for more education. Sorry, I think I'm ahead, so I'll just wait a little until it catches up.
Oh.
Yeah, so like I was saying, Somali students started arriving in Washington back in the 70s and 80s for education. However, back in when the civil war broke in the 90s in Somalia, with the war displacing a lot of families, some families moved or arrived in Washington state early 91, 92, 93. And as more families started settling in Washington, we're really big on community and family oriented. So one thing that started happening was having a community center for Somalis for Somali families that were arriving as newcomers. So, and the other things is that as we form families, community, and more families are arriving, one thing that we do need is our little shopping centers. So you saw a lot of Somali stores or halal stores opening up around Washington. I remember there was only like 2 stores back in when we came here in 97. There was one at Rainier and 23rd, and then there was another one back in Tequila, and those were the only 2 stores. But now there's so many of them by every corner. But it just shows how the Somalis have grown in this state. And I think one of the things that attract Somalis to this state is the weather. Because I could tell you my mom's 2 primary reasons of moving from Ohio to here was there was no snow and her best friend was here. So a lot attraction for the weather. One of the other things that we do that started popping out is in the 90s were mosques. So we are really grounded by our faith. So of course, as we settle, we have place of worship. So mosques were also found as a place of worship. We're really good at food, culture, dance, but I think restaurants also were coming out at that time. So going back to Somali Health Board has a lot of different programs, and I think without partners, we couldn't have been able to deliver these programs. So these are some of the partners that we partnered up with. Like I say, we have different programs. I think there's like 15 or 14 listed on here. One of them being the developmental screening and referral services that we got, and that we were able to do so much with this program as far as autism and stigma and all that in the community, which I will talk about later. But other programs include Whole Child Initiative, centering motherhood, Room Stop the Bleeding, lid training, and so much more. Soccer, and our newest program is the Senior Health Program. Next slide. So, yeah, things were going along, and then everything stopped because of COVID-19, and we had to re-strategize our deliverables, as far as like all our trainings used to be done on in person, so we couldn't do that. So we figured out like we could carry it on with Zoom without stopping our trainings and workshops that were really important to the communities. And as COVID increased and more jobs were lost, one of our focus was how do we respond to the community's need. So one of the things that Somali Health Board has done was to create a hub for everything that starts from resources for rental assistance or utilities or any like assistance applications or unemployment. So we were doing those responses as on the top of our programs. The other things that we have done on that hub is that as guidelines came, we were able to translate them in Somali and have the community have it available to them in Somali and English. And also, like what we have done on the website is created I don't want to say PowerPoints, but images of Somali doctors and nurses, and just encouraging for to follow the guidelines from the state. Sorry. What else? The other thing that we have done with COVID response was having an actual conversation, a community conversation on Facebook Live, where in communities we're able to get updates from health professionals. We also have started a mental health community conversation on it as well. Next. So going back to the Autism Project, or the developmental screening referrals, this started back in 2018, and it started with 7 or 6 consultants and 2 parent ambassador. But by the end of the program, we had 4 parent ambassador and myself as the family resource navigator. And with this project beginning, what we've done is hold focus groups and gather informations of like what would the community want us to focus on. What themes would you want to hear? We didn't want to create something and say, okay, here's what we created for you. Let's see, you know. So we wanted to take it perspective of the community and then deliver on those. So the themes that came from the focus groups were the stigma that's associated with the autism, resources, empathy, and a lot of involvement from religious leaders and Duxi teachers. Duxi are Sunday school, so Duxi teachers. Um, some of the ways we thought we would engage and just make awareness of autism was having the autism awareness event. This would have been our fourth annual autism event, but because of COVID, we had to do it on Zoom and cancel our actual event. But this was from 2019, and just to bring out like, as you could see, the gathering hall was almost full, and we had vendors that came. We also had parents and providers. If you go on to the next slide, you see that Fadumo was one of the parent ambassador, and Dr. Yahya Yusuf, he's also a religious leader in the community, and he also has a son in the spectrum. So it was really powerful to hear from him and his perspective, and also I think it brought a lot to acceptance from other parents that were in that event, and just more awareness. So more of some of the focus groups that we focused on and delivered was the need for more education. So we had workshops that was specifically for community members and for providers. So this is from the community members, and this is on early intervention, diagnosis, treatments, and overall. Like I was saying, we have done through the year and almost a half, I think almost 2 years, little short of like a couple months of 2 years. We have done 5 different workshops for parents and 3 different workshops for providers. With this project, we were also able to start a support group for parents that had autism, had children with autism or also developmentally delayed. There was one for for Somali fathers and Somali mothers, um, just covering overall like emotional well-being, how to navigate the system, access to resources. And as COVID hit, our last few months were under, we talked about understanding and using positive behaviors at home and also like remote learning just for preparation of this year's school opening. Next. Yes, the MCAT. So one of the big things that we were able to complete and be able to do this was translate the MCAT to Somali, and it was intensive, long journey. I was there at the end, but from what I've heard, it took a lot of focus groups, and also from the doctors. Looking back at the consultants, one of the doctors' primary focus was on translating on the MChat. So what they have done is translated the MChat from English to Somali and then Somali to English, just to make sure that they were able to capture every dialogue in Somali. Somali has one spoken language and written, but understanding that different folks are from different region of Somali and that they speak different dialects. So we wanted to make sure that whoever was reading the question was understanding the question appropriately. And there's certain questions that you would ask in English that may not be appropriate in Somali. And so they had to find all that little things and just make sure those little things were not missed. So it took a lot of days and hours to get it done. But one of the things that we have done is successfully translated the MCAT from English to Somali, and now it's accessible to everyone. So, like I said, another thing that we have done is created a resource guide for the community, and this resource guide, the booklet that says Somali Health Board community resource, is actually created by Somali Health Board. It has clinics where you could get assessments, treatments, and diagnosis. Support group, parent support groups. Let's see. Um, we had sensory recreational places that you could take your children to. There's so many different things that were in it, but I'm sorry, those are the things that I could think of right now. ML, sorry.
It's pretty much, I would say that book is amazing in my opinion, because it kind of guides you through, let's say for instance you have a child who's just been diagnosed, and it's like, okay, where do I go from here? It literally tells you a places where for ABA therapy, speech therapy. It gives you
Mhm.
just a pathway, just to get through everything, from, like Fortuna was saying, playgrounds that have, that's made for children on the spectrum, even places where you can take your kids certain days of the week where it's meant specifically for kids on the spectrum, so it's just pretty much a navigation, and something that I give to all my parents who come to the support group, and just, it helps them overall. It's one of the best things that we've done with the Autism Project, in my opinion.
Thank you. And as we hold groups, some of the stuff that we share with the communities or professionals are these booklets with the milestones, moments, and please ask just for something that they could take home and look at it. And then this is our, so the booklet that we showed you earlier was, I think, by 2018. And this is our latest edition with 2020, just a little updates, but same theme. And this is available online. Um, I would say just for takeaways, I think is okay to recognize that as Somalis grew in the community or around the King County areas, I think some things that we have to realize and providers need to realize is that we are not just serving one generations, we are serving different generations. There's the generations from my mom, but you have us like Amel and myself who consider ourselves with second generations, I'm guessing, and we're able to finish school here, understand the culture, and navigate the system really well compared to some of our newcomers, our new mom comers. So just understanding that, I think it separates, it provides more window for providers, and also um, understanding that autism is not as bad stigma in the community as it was before. I think the community had progressed a lot, but do we still need to work on it? Yes, but I think we made much accomplish on understanding, because this was new, and this diagnosis is new to the community, and I think it will take them time to understand, and as we go along and as we educate ourselves, I think we'll be in better position later. But yeah, Mel, anything you want to add? And please, why don't you share your experience as a mom? Sorry, I'll stop talking.
That's okay. So, for me, the journey started when my daughter was about 14 months, I would like to say. And, we just started off with, speech therapy and OT. My biggest challenge, I would have to say, is finding her a diagnosis. I remember it was the end of, I think it was the end of November of 2015 when I started, I kept hearing early intervention, early intervention. One of the things that I really wished at that time when I was going through with my journey with my daughter was I wish I had Somali Health Board. I wish I had, this Autism Project, because at that time it was just my husband and I, we were just a team, the two of us. I didn't know anyone with a child on the spectrum. I didn't know where to start, honestly. And once I got her into speech and OT, it was, I kept hearing like early intervention, early intervention. So I just kind of went ahead. I did my research. I found out in order to get her early intervention, which is one of the things that they provide, is ABA therapy. ABA is applied behavioral analysis, which is, they see a behavior, they apply different therapies, and they try to pretty much correct the behavior. And it was like, okay, well, how do I get my daughter ABA? I went through a lot of different organizations, a lot of different places that do, therapies. But every time I would call somewhere, it's like, well, you need a diagnose before you can get your foot in the door. You need a diagnose. Okay, well, where do I get a diagnose from? How do I do this? I went to her pediatrician. It's like, well, here's a list of places. Here's a list of referrals. Everywhere I would go, it was like the waiting list was a year and a half. And I feel like with my daughter's journey, that was the toughest part. It was, early intervention is key, but in order to get early intervention, you need a diagnosis. So at that point, I went to different, hospitals and just put her on a bunch of different waiting lists. And one of the, I finally found this amazing program. They diagnosed her, they gave her therapy, but the other places that I had been on the waiting list called me a year later. So I feel like the biggest obstacle for, I'm not just saying only just for Somali community, for our communities, but I just think in general is getting that early diagnosis, being able to get your child diagnosed within a reasonable amount of time so that you can get the therapies that they need. So you can get the, speech and, ABA therapy, and just getting her into early preschool. So things like that. Diagnosis was the biggest thing for me. But once we had the diagnosis, it was just like everything else was smooth sailing, because the diagnosis was the key to getting her getting her what she needed. And then but that was my journey. But one other journey that I had was coming aboard with Somali Health Board and being part of the team, being able to be a parent ambassador, and doing the support groups. I felt like I had a place where I belonged. I had other moms who were going through what I was going through, and who some of them, have older children than my daughter. Some of them have younger children. So it's like you get both sides. I get the experience of, the mother with the older child, and then I also can give advice to the mother with the, younger kids, and just having a place where I belonged. And, having these mothers, we all come together once a month. We have this amazing support system. It's a place where you're comfortable, you're able to express yourself, if you've had a rough day, if you need help finding resources, if you just need someone to talk to, or just even someone to listen to. So I'm glad that Somali Health Board is doing this. It's been, in my opinion, the best. We do a lot here, but it's by far one of the best ones. And I hear on a constant base, the mothers in the community, like, what, thank Somali Health Board for putting this support group together, because it means a lot to me. I have a place where I can just call in, now due to the pandemic, and just, have a listening ear. So it's been a journey, but it's been a wonderful one. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Emma, for sharing.
No problem.
You're muted.
I'm muted.
You're muted.
Thank you very much, Fartun. That's usually what happens. I start talking and someone says, Jim, you're muted. So, it's just been amazing to kind of be around for as long as I have in the autism community, and really just watch the Somali Health Board evolve over the years, and the advocacy that they have been able to do to provide. And really, I will be honest, I learned a lot, about myself, and about, from attending Somali Health Board meetings, and learned about autism, and learned about how people perceive autism, by going there. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but I'm actually in one of those pictures that you sent. I'm sitting there, on one of the little tables. It took me, I had to look really closely to see,
No,
oh,
no,
there I am.
yeah.
I guess my question for you, Fartun, is, or maybe Amal as well, so you talk about the evolution, or how things have changed, and when I first started really connecting with the Somali community in Seattle, there was, I kept hearing, well, there's no word for autism in Somali, right?
Yeah.
And, and people saying, well, this doesn't happen in Somalia, and frankly, a lot of like, well, it's a vaccine or something like that, is causing it. Well, how would you, what would you might attribute, the evolution, the kind of changes that have happened within the community? What has the Somali Health Board done, and to kind of help facilitate that?
Yeah, no, I could speak from my experience, and I've been around Somali Health Board for a long time since it started, even though I wasn't involved as a staff. One of the things that they've been doing, like I said earlier, is that this autism awareness has been happening for like years, right? And also providing some educations on the community. Like you said, autism, that one word is new to us in general. Yes, and back home, there was no diagnosis of autism. Were there kids who might have been diagnosed autism? Yes, but do we have a word for it? No. I think one of the things that we say is with the boys, especially, like, oh, it's just a typical boy. He might be hyperactive and may have some other diagnosis that's going on with him. But was he evaluated? No. I think that's the gap. The evaluation part, the diagnosis wasn't done in Somali. So of course, like we always say, there is no word in Somali with that says autism. But I think some of the growth that I have seen is that with the education and with the immunization as well, and also just learning about how people, what do you call it? How where's the word I'm looking for? I can't think. But and it's not the cause. Okay, like let's say the cause, right? What causes like autism? As we learn that, I think we're understanding more. Even though we have that fear of the immunization being one of them. I'm a parent. I have this conversation with my sisters all the time. And that conversation of the immunization being the cause of autism is still around the community, but we're still talking about it. It's a nonstop conversation that's happening in families and communities. And we all choose different ways. We can't force anybody on anything, but we could educate them. So, and I think that's one of the things that we have been doing is educating the community.
Thank you, Fartun. Education is key for all of us, right?
Yes.
So thank you so much for sharing what you did. The information about the Somali Health Board, and Amal, certainly thank you for sharing your perspective as a mom. We're going to transition over to our next group. So we're going to stay here in South Seattle. At Hope Central, and a great organization serving the community in South Seattle, and they helped create the Vietnamese Family Autism Advisory Board, and we have Dr. Tran Kirkpatrick and Leah Tran here to tell us more about that, and we'll let you guys take it away.
Yes, so thank you, Jim, for inviting us to give the Vietnamese perspective. Thank you to Seattle Children's Hospital. And I would like to be able to give you the Vietnamese perspective and also to share with you about VFAB. Next slide. So VFAB is the Vietnamese Family Autism Advisory Board. And if you look closely in this picture, Jim is also in this picture. So VFAB is an organization made up of community members and professionals. And we first came together back in September of 2017. There's a group of stakeholders who were very concerned about the Vietnamese community, the lack of education around autism and autism awareness. And we formed this group. And ever since then, we've been doing work in those areas on a shoestring budget. But the next slide. I'm happy to say that VFAB was the recipient under the auspices of Hope Central, 2 grants from Best Start for Kids. And we are very proud that this is the first time the Vietnamese community was specifically recognized and prioritized for these fundings. With the funds, we've been able to increase family support in the Vietnamese community. And we were able to elicit community members and professionals to have them examine the MCAT-R, the screening tool for autism, and make it culturally relevant in the Vietnamese community in King County. And just, this is an undertaking, as the Somali Health Board also shared with you as well. And we were happy to say that gave the Vietnamese community a voice, and the work we're doing is helping to close the gap in healthcare disparities. Next slide. And I wanted to give you a little background. So why did we start this? Why are, what compelled us to do this work? Well, we also, at our clinic, we saw that the Vietnamese families were not completing the MCAT-R screening tool. And this is administered at the well checks at 18 months and 24 months, and they were not being completed, which also means that their children will be diagnosed later, which gives them a poor outcome. And so, and I'm going to share with you later about our work in the MCAT-R screening tool. Next slide. But before I do that, I wanted to give you just a little more background about the Vietnamese migration. And typically, I think of it as 3 waves, and some people might say 4, but we're going to present 3 waves. The first wave started in 1971 to 1975. This is the first wave of well-educated, the more English proficient medical professionals, technical managers coming over before the fall of Saigon. And then we see the second wave between 1978 to the mid-80s, boat people, farmers, fishermen, small town merchants, former military officials. I have an aunt who came over in this wave, and I will talk about her later. And then the third wave came after there was US legislation that opened up for political prisoners to come over and Amerasians. That's more between 1992 to 2000. And in particular, the state of Washington, Governor Dan Evans opened up the state of Washington to the refugees, Vietnamese refugees, and so we have a large settlement here. Next slide. I always say a picture has 1,000 words, and for some of you who have Vietnamese patients, I show this slide. It kind of captures when you're trying to understand the Vietnamese psyche, especially those who recently arrived. They are trying to juggle work and family. A lot of Vietnamese families will have 2 to 3 jobs that they are working, and that could be at a bakery shop, it could be at a pho restaurant, a nail salon. That aunt I talked about who came over on a boat and escaped, she opened up a nail shop in San Francisco. A big problem is language for anybody coming over, and I can share that continues to be a problem. The shame, the PTSD that comes from war. Not only are we dealing with the trauma that comes from migration, but you also have war trauma. Next slide. So we ask, why do we care about autism? So in the Vietnamese community, autism is not well known. There is a word for it, Duki, but what we try to educate is that it is not because you did something wrong and you're being punished by having a child. You know, we talk about the genetics, we talk about environmental factors. We share that there's one in 54 children have autism. It affects all 4 times more in boys than girls. And in particular, in the 5-mile radius around Hope Central, our clinic, let's say there are 18,000 children, we'll expect about 350 of them to have autism. So at Hope Central, a third of our primary care patients are on the spectrum. Next slide. So here I mentioned earlier about the MCAT-R screening tool. So with one of the BSK grants, we were able to begin this work. We initially picked one translation out of the existing 5. It was made up of a panel of 3 providers. And then from that, we had focus groups. And the focus groups were made up of community members and also Vietnamese professionals. And we took each question, so went through each of the 20 questions, question by question, and looked at what it was asking and tried to make the language better understanding for the Vietnamese people in King County. And this is, you can see the pictures of some of the focus groups. Next slide. So then after this work was completed, we invited the community to a data sharing event. And at this event, we had 56 members attend, and we polled them. 80% of them said that the adapted version was of high quality, and another 80% indicated that it was culturally relevant. And from this, we created a white sheet which can be used by providers to help them better administer the MCAT-R. Next slide. So on the left, you can see the version we picked, and on the right was the adapted version that the focus groups came up with. Next slide. And in these focus groups, we also asked priorities of the parents. Now, if we asked, what would you wish for? And so what we heard is, I wish there were more doctors who specialize in autism evaluation and care. I wished my doctor recognized missed milestones and listened to me as I described my children's progress. I wish there were more ABA therapists. I wish there were more teachers in my classroom. And next slide. We also asked our parents at the focus groups the barriers they recognized for seeking care. And here you can see language. The language barrier we talked about comes up. Lack of knowledge. This is like such a maze, this referral system. Transportation, time. You know, I'm working 2 to 3 jobs. Next slide. And we also asked them, what are the barriers to following through with the referrals? And here again, lack of knowledge, that language piece comes up. Providers, access to the services, time, transportation, physical, emotional, financial burdens. Next slide. What about structural barriers, we asked. They named healthcare system, the policy, education, discrimination, and implicit bias. Next slide. And we asked, how can you overcome the barriers? What are some recommendations for providers? And what we heard, relationship with your families, having a patient navigator. And at our clinic, I'm proud to say we do have one. Inclusivity, equipping teachers to recognize neurodiversity, in-clinic home-based services. Next slide. And then we asked parents, what are some recommendations for parents to overcome barriers? And we had heard about advocacy mentioned earlier in the Somali Health Board. Here, education about advocacy, small steps to breaking through the stigma that having a child with autism, inclusivity here, relationship with your providers, having a safety net of parents supporting parents. Next slide. And so I wanted to share more about VFABs work, not only with in the community, but with community members, but also with providers. We were able to have 4 continuing medical education events. 2 in 2019 had 50 participants, and 2 events in 2020 garnered 153 participants. We felt that we were able to make a difference by helping providers be confident in screening for autism and managing referrals and comorbidities. And this was at the Health Point with their network. And we also developed a primary care toolkit for local resources for parents and providers. Next slide, please. And here, I love pictures because they convey, like 1,000 words. We asked providers at Health Point, what do they feel that they need to better care for children with ASD? And you can see here, resources is a big one, time, support, referral, education. Next slide. And so what did we do before COVID? We cared for a certain number of families through our patient navigator. We held monthly meetings. It was a forum for professionals and for families to come together with an invited guest speaker to talk about autism-related educational materials. We participated in health fairs. We held awareness-raising celebrations, Christmas parties, Det, which is a big a holiday in Vietnamese culture, which is the Lunar New Year. And we also attended various Vietnamese community gatherings to promote autism awareness. Next slide. And then COVID hit, and we pivoted to online weekly meetings. Our families came from the community clinic, our VFAB contacts. Tammy and Levine have been very instrumental in connecting with our families, providing COVID-19 crisis-related services, as well as disability-related services, disseminating information regarding COVID, autism, and various assistant programs. And I know that this might be a little small on the screen, but this is an example of data pulled from April. You can see total services rendered 215 in April. There are various different services, like unemployment application was 91. And I know Levine will be sharing more later. Next slide, please. And I also sent out weekly emails from like mid-February to mid-June, just giving the latest medical information about COVID. So I was reading all the literature, and I would just summarize the links, and giving links to the city and county crisis relief resources for patients, and also recapping one of the primary care autism toolkit items from our CMEs. Next slide. So now I want to introduce Levine Tran, who is our patient navigator at Hope Central, and she will take the stage.
Hello, everyone. My name is Levine Tran. I am one of the more people that Dr. Tanji mentioned earlier. I came to the United States on the second waiver. English is my second language. So you probably hear me and probably on some English not very smoothly, but I try my best. I work in the environment, how I come to work in this environment. Back to 5 years ago, I become the Vietnamese interpreter, and I do a lot of interpretation at Children Autism Center. I met so many Vietnamese families who have kids with autism, and when we asked the meeting with the specialist, after we get out from the appointment, a parent came to me and asked me, "Do I know anything about the autism?" And I'm very surprised that's what, because to me, I don't know anything about autism at all. So the family, it really needs support, and they just came to me, and many of them say, "Levine, can you help me to apply the benefits?" And I don't know anything. Just beside that, I do interpreter, but I don't know how to do anything else. But I do the research. And I looked at one at that time, one organization that they're looking for the Vietnamese family support specialist. Then since then, I apply and work with the Vietnamese family. So that it's been 4 years ago. And then 2 years ago, Jim emailed me and asked me if I can join with the VFAB group. So where I met Dr. Tran. Since then, I become the patient navigator, and I start working at Hope Central and support the family. When I support the family during the before the COVID, of course, as Dr. Sanchit mentioned, that we have the monthly meeting, we hire the professional come in and talk with us. We have so many events going on, and it's very smoothly that we're doing that until the COVID hit. And then COVID hit, we don't know what to do for the family because we usually meet them, and by now everything is blocked out. But certainly a lot of families struggling because they don't know how to apply unemployment, of course, because English is their second language, because the language barriers. We have to help them, we support them to apply for unemployment. For example, we do also do the cash voucher register. We also help them to apply the housing or rental assistance, utility assistance, food drive. We actually talking about that, I would like to mention Tammy. Tammy is my co-worker, and she worked along with me very well. Both of us working on how to support. She's the one that created the flyer and send it to a family every single week. Everything going on that she the one that created the family, and both of us create a lot of video clip to support not only the parent, but support them how to do safety at home, and a lot of things during the COVID. We also, during the service, I would like to tell you that one particular family that I've been working with for 4 years since I met them. Did you see the picture up there? You see mother and a son who had autism, and the same as everybody, that's her second son. When he turned 2 years old, she did not know that he had autism, but she recognized that he is different than her older son. So she bring him to see his family doctor and asked doctor, say, how come my son already 2 years old and he's still not talking? And doctor say, oh, don't worry. He going to talk a lot when he turned to 4 to 5 years old. And right now, if he not talking, he going to talk later. So don't worry about that. And when he turned to 3 and at almost 4 years old, and she had no patience, she came back to doctor and say, doctor, I think there's something going on with my son because he did not pay attention to me. He didn't do eye contact. So a lot of things I can see different in him. So she requested the doctor to refer. Then doctor refer her son to Seattle Seattle Children's Hospital. So since then that he had Jeff, and then again, because the language barrier, she doesn't know how to apply all the things that he needs, the ABA, DDA, or IEP, until she met me 4 years ago. And since then, I support her and apply everything for her. The one thing that I would like to point out that Andrew is very hard to control himself, because every time when he hear the noise, he can come run over and then try to, for example, the kid crying, and he come over and he try to stop the kid crying by spanking the kids. Or if somebody talking too loud, he come over and then yell at them or crying. So that's something that really hard to control him. But since he have ABA and since he have involved, actually his mom involved in monthly family supports every month. So we have support him and support her and tell her what to have him at home. So since then, right now, Andrew improved a lot. Did you see in the picture that he sing? He can able to study in 10 different languages that nobody teaching him, self-study. And right now he can able to start a couple of words, not the whole sentence, but he can able to sing a lot of songs. He memorized a lot of different songs. So I'm so proud of him. So that's one success story that I would like to share, and proud of the mom. Next page, please. Just talking about the meetings since COVID starts, Tammy and I start in Tesla. We have monthly meeting. We call the family, because the need of the family, the need of the support, we have to have monthly meeting since March until October. That every single week we have the meeting, and the family join us, start from 15 to 20 to 25 families. So every single week they waiting to join in the meeting. It's not only what they wanted to hear from us, but actually what we wanted to listen to them, whatever that we can able to support them during the COVID, everything in general thing in the community. So because we are planning to have another group of the meeting, because right now we're thinking that we focus for early intervention, because the autism, because a lot of people, they don't think that the kids that needs any support until they get older. So because I have been talking with a lot of parents that your kid that you need to join in the early intervention, and they say, no, I don't think that my kid needs it. But until they get older, and they think that's the kid that really needs support. But at that time, a little bit, it's, to me, it got too late. So I really wanted to focus on the group of 0 to 6. For the parents involved. So the meeting started last night with 10 parents involved. So it's very successful. Every parent share what they're thinking, what they need for their kids. So to me, I'm really happy to start it up yesterday because of that. And the weekly meeting that right now we become the bi-weekly. And then we have another group of meeting that we want to start. And then also beside that, we want to have the Visual ABA 101 course for Vietnamese parents start in December. And the group of people that we start last night already signed up for the last for the training next month. So I'm so excited that something that I can able to support the family and the Vietnamese community. And I know so many family, know so many people out there in the Vietnamese community have autism, and a lot of them still don't know what an autism about. So we really wanted to send a message to all the community to know if anybody have any question, please contact us. We don't want anybody is waiting it too late until the kid, because a lot of kids out there right now already 20, 25 or 30, and they're still not in the system and they don't know anything, and the parents still don't know what to do and how to do. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you, Jim, for put up all the slide for us.
Here I am, not muted again. Well, Levine and Tan, it's just been so exciting to hear and see what things have changed. Over the years, I guess my question for the two of you is, what do you see as the impact on the Vietnamese community, and particularly these great monthly meetings that, in pre-COVID days, were just joyous occasions, right? So, I would love for you just to describe those a little bit.
The impact in the Vietnamese community right now, because the culture that I can see, the culture that a lot of people still thinking maybe in the past life they did something wrong, and they come into this life, if they have a kid with disability or something is not typical, that they think that's some bad luck that comes to them, and the people probably laugh at them. So they don't want it to let other people know. If the brother or sister know that they have the kid with disability or kid with autism, they say, "Oh, don't play with that kid. Don't play that with that crazy kid." See, they don't see how important that's, because there's nothing wrong with the kid, nothing wrong with them. This is something that it happened right now in this life, so we have to take it. So I really, really see that impact right now, because I know so many of the people around me still not open up.
Yeah, thank you, Levine. So before COVID, these in-person monthly meetings we had, it was an environment that was very open for kids to run around, kids with autism. Like we realized, because before, parents would just feel ashamed because their kids were making too much noise, but we said no, this is a safe place for the kids to run around, and we want you to sit and learn about autism. And providers were in the mix as well, which I think it's just you learn from each other, and it's very important. And then with COVID, we pivoted to the weekly meetings from February to October, and initially I think it was one of those, like, wow, we're just so glad that you're having this meeting, because we're just starved for connection, right? And so so it was just a space for just Vietnamese families to come and just share what they've been going through during COVID, the isolation, and to receive support. It was, Levine and Tammy have been very just gracious with their time and just helping families. And so it was like word of mouth, and we were getting other people, from the community who needed help as well. And we were at these meetings every single week.
Yeah.
And then slowly, I think it was just in October, we thought, okay, we'll go to bi-weekly. And part of it also, we're going to open up this new group for birth to 6. And last night, as Levine was sharing, we had about 10 families, and it was just really neat to hear them each tell their, share their story and realize, they're not alone. They're shared some of the same elements of just, their fears for their child, their hopes, and dreams, and just not knowing, like, what is this and what is early intervention and what is ABA and all this, like it just, so I think that was, like Levine mentioned, it was very successful, and she was able to enroll some of them for this virtual 101 class that will be happening in December.
Your excitement is it comes through from, for both of you. So, and it's just, the community that you create, and the autism community that you create, just allows people to be themselves. And I think that is just, something that I see in the Somali Health Board, and I've seen, through VFAB, that exposure, and that ability for folks to just say, hey, we can be who we are, and, our community accepts us. So thank you so much. We'll get you guys back a little bit later. And we're going to transition to our last group. And, this is if the first two groups are fairly new, the ARC has been around for many, many years. And the ARC of King County as well. So I'm pleased to introduce Sandra Urite from the ARC of King County, and I think we've got Adriana back there somewhere, so we'll get her to a little bit later maybe. Up there, she is.
It's right there.
Okay, great. All right, well, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jim. And thank you, Seattle Children's Autism Center, for invite us and give us the opportunity to share a little bit about the Latino community, the ARC of King County, and how we had been serving Spanish-speaking families. Next slide, please. Okay. As Jim says, my name is Sandra Urite. I'm information and research specialist for the ARC of for Spanish-speaking families for the ARC of King County, but I'm also a mom of a 17-year-old daughter with Cri-du-Chat syndrome. And tonight I would like to tell you a little bit about the ARC of King County. The ARC was formed in 1936 when a group of parents raising children with intellectual and developmental disabilities came together to advocate for their children's rights to live, to learn, work, and play in the community. Today, our goal is promote the civil rights movement for all persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities to thrive as equal and valued and active members of the community. Next slide, please. The ARC of King County is one of 730 chapters 730 chapters between the ARC of United States and one of the 9 chapters between the ARC of Washington. But along with all the other chapters nationwide, we work together to promote and protect the human rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and actively support their full inclusion and participation in the community through their lifetimes. Next slide, please. I can talk about our programs all night, but I know we don't have so much time. I would try to explain a little bit about the most important programs we have at the ARC. We have the information and family support. There is for parents, guardians, and siblings. They can connect with us, calling us, phone calls or emails, asking questions, or if they need a resource or if they need support, and we try to connect with them and help them to navigate the system, to answer their questions, and to connect with those resources. The supported living services is for adults living in the community. We have also the representative payee, that is for individuals that need financial management assistance. Homelessness prevention program, that is for families that are at risk of losing their housing. Advocacy for people with developmental disabilities, but also family members and community allies. We really work on the side with self-advocates. We want to be really movement in this community to be sure that the people with disabilities voice is being heard in the community and respect their decisions. The Healthy Relationship Program is also for people with developmental disabilities, parents, guardians, and siblings, if they have questions about sexual health, internet safety, and identifying and reporting abuse. Also, we talk about values like respect, trust, choice, consent, and public versus private behavior. Next slide, please. The parent-to-parent, or P2P, as we know the program too, is a program that believes that often the most valuable form of support comes from other parents who have traveled the road before them. And with the parent-to-parent program, we offer community events, support groups, including Facebook groups. We have the Helping Parent matches, in which we link parents with a training mentor parent who shares similar life experiences. We are so happy in the last few years we created this Silver Tsunami and Senior Caregiving Support Program, because we know that aging families and caregivers really need some special support and understanding of their situation. And we try to also help them to plan, for the future. The IEP Parent Partner is another wonderful program where we connect training and experiences IEP parent partners with parents and guardians that are in need of support to navigate the special education system. Next slide, please. And now talking more about the Latino community, or the ARC Latino community. The ARC has been working really hard supporting the Latino community for more than 10 years. We started with a really small group. I think it was around 30 families. And it was through a grant for the program, the 360 program. And the grant ended, but the ARC really saw that the Latino community was in need of continued support. They decide, to continue serving our community. And it was around, I believe that for the last 4 or 5 years, we have been experiencing a substantial growth of the Latino families that are connecting with us. And that was the moment when I entered to the ARC of King County as a staff member, because at that point was only my coworker, Patty Gonzalez, and the ARC was facing really a lot, of new families, Latino families connecting, and they are so that, okay, we need another staff that can support the community. And so right now we have a lot of families that are contacting us to get information, resources, emotional support. And we serve the Latino community and the Latino families regardless legal status, economic or social backgrounds. We focus on racial equity, cultural respect, and we work really hard to empower people with disabilities and their families to advocate for their rights. The Arc of King County offers all these programs that I talked before, but they are adapted to the Latino community needs and taking in consideration our culture. I think next slide, please. My coworker, Patricia Gonzalez, she's the parent-to-parent coordinator for Spanish-speaking families. I would say something. she does a lot of more than you can see on the slide, but she leads the parent-to-parent program for the Latino community. She does the helping parent trainings and in Spanish. She offers the emotional support, informal meetups that we call charlemos entre amigas. There's like some kind of coffee and conversation. The IP parent partner for Spanish-speaking families. Next slide, please. And as I say, my name is Sandra Urite, Information and Resource Specialist for the Spanish-speaking families. I'm working on the information and resources for families. I do Latino family gatherings that are formal educational meetups monthly, twice a month. Also, educational workshops could be about DDA, special education, guardianship, future planning. We also have smooth talkers in Espanol or in Spanish, that is for AAC users, and the senior caregiving support also for the Spanish-speaking families. Next slide, please. Thank you. I will say that as a member, as a Latino person, I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I would say we have a lot of strengths as a community. In general, the Latinos have this tendency to have large and close-knit families. We have a strong family foundation, also strong work ethic, and we are really hard workers. Very, very, very community orientated, and we are really resilient. And I know that we have much more strengths that we can talk today, but I would like to focus right now in the barriers that our community face. So the next slide, please. Thank you. The first barrier that we see our community face most of the time is the language. Most families believe that their inability to communicate in English not only make it more difficult for them to advocate for themselves and their children, but make it more difficult also for their needs to be met. Another barrier is the immigration status. Families have fear to ask or fear to apply for services. Sometimes if the kids are undocumented, that add another barrier because the kids cannot access some services or resources or benefits. The lack of knowledge about how the disability system works and how to navigate it. We hear all the time that some families express that they perceived discrimination by service providers or sometimes the agencies they represent, simply for the fact because they are Latinos. Also, we serve a lot of low-income families. Another barrier for these families is to try to manage the level of stress and emotional pain for the separation with from the rest of their families, and social cultural influences. We see all the time that in our community sometimes they have hard time asking for help or asking for resources. So we need to work with the families to encourage them, to apply. Another barrier is the religious belief related with disability. We see families that look at disability as a gift, something that God give a child with disability because it's like a gift. But also some other families can see the disability as punishment, for something they did wrong. Another barrier is the lack of professionals, especially in the school system or the medical system, with knowledge about the Latino culture and their needs. And related with this is also the lack of or ignorance about that the diversity we can see inside the Latino community. We are all like in the same box. We are all Latinos, but we come from different countries with diverse social, economical, and geographic backgrounds. We see also that sometimes the service providers are not really educating the families or the parents about the services they or their children qualify. And most of the families we serve express that they had not been educated about their child's diagnosis, what the diagnosis meant, what to expect, or how to take care of their children. And last but not least, now with COVID, the Latino community is facing another barrier, is school and doctor's appointments. Everything had moved to a virtual platform. We have a lot of families that don't know how to navigate it. Could be that they don't have access to a computer or a laptop, or when they have the computer, but the instructions to access are in English, so they don't understand. Lack of interpreters to support them during the school remote learning is one of the biggest barriers that some of the families are facing. And at the ARC, we have been trying to support them, to connect with schools and connect with medical providers to be sure that they continue to access these services and getting the support they need during this difficult time. Right now, all our programs, the ARC programs and events, are online mostly via Zoom. So we continue doing the monthly Latino family gatherings, and my coworker Patty is doing weekly Charlemos Entre Amigas. So we know that the families are really happy to have these opportunities to be connected with other parents, and with sharing their situation and sharing what they are feeling, what they are facing. I think it's important to realize that our community has been growing a lot during this last few years, and I'm so proud to be serving them, because I have this feeling that we can do a lot more, and so we will continue working to serve the Latino community. And now I would like to, introduce you to fabulous, awesome mom, Adriana. She is really a mom that is very connected with the ARC and participate of our events. So I know that you will be happy to hear her story. Thank you so much.
Okay. Buenas noches. Mi nombre es Adriana Benavides García y tengo 42 años. Soy una madre soltera que emigró a este país hace 10 años y esta es mi historia. La historia de una madre hispana que está criando a 2 niños con autismo. También es la historia de una mamá que ha tenido que escuchar el diagnóstico de autismo no solo una vez, sino 2 veces.
Good evening. My name is Adriana Benavides Garcia, and I am 42 years old. I am a single mom who emigrated to this country 10 years ago. This is my story, the story of a Hispanic mom who is raising 2 boys with autism. This is also the story of a mom who received an autism diagnosis not only once, but twice.
Hoy estoy aquí para compartir mi historia con ustedes y espero que pueda servir a los padres y a cualquiera que tenga un familiar o un ser querido con autismo.
Today, I am here to share that story with you, and I hope that it helps parents and others who may have a family member or a loved one with autism.
También voy a contarles acerca de las barreras y dificultades que tuve que enfrentar en el camino y que sigo enfrentando para que mis hijos tengan la mejor calidad de vida posible.
I am also going to tell you about the barriers and difficulties I had to face along the way and about the struggles I keep confronting so that I can give my children the best possible quality of life.
Mi hijo Gesed nació en el año de 2012 y en el año de 2016, un mes antes de que él cumpliera 4 años, me dieron el diagnóstico de autismo. Fue un duelo para mí porque todas las expectativas que un padre tiene para sus hijos, en ese momento las vi morir.
My son Gesed was born in 2012. In 2016, just a month before he turned 4 years old, he was given the autism disorder diagnosis. The feelings of grief and loss came rushing through my head right after the initial shock of hearing the news. All those hopes and expectations a parent has for their kid vanished right in front of me.
Yo no sabía casi nada que era autismo y lo primero que pasó por mi mente cuando me dijeron el diagnóstico fue, ¿qué voy a hacer yo con un niño con autismo? ¿Cómo lo voy a ayudar? ¿Cómo lo voy a educar? ¿Qué pasará cuando Gesed vaya a la escuela? ¿Qué dirá mi familia?
I knew almost nothing about autism. The first things that crossed my mind after hearing the diagnosis were, what I am going to do with a child with autism? How can I help my child? How am I going to educate him? What will happen to him when he starts going to school? What will my family think about this?
Encima vinieron los sentimientos de insuficiencia. ¿Podré ser lo suficiente para mi hijo? Ese día que me dieron el diagnóstico, saliendo con el especialista, todo el camino de regreso a casa, me fui llorando. Y pensando también, ¿por qué a mí? ¿Qué hice mal? ¿Por qué no me cuidé durante mi embarazo?
On top of that, the feelings of insufficiency were overwhelming. Do I have all that is needed as a parent to meet my kids' needs? I remember I cried all the way back home after seeing the specialist. I kept questioning myself. Why me? What did I do wrong? Didn't I take good care of myself during my pregnancy?
Me sentía culpable. Fue un choque escuchar esas noticias, ya que tenían un impacto muy grande y difícil en mi vida.
I felt all of it was my fault. It was devastating hearing this news, as it also had a profound impact on my life.
El proceso de aprender acerca de los apoyos para mi primer hijo diagnosticado con autismo, mientras que recibía las noticias de un segundo diagnóstico de autismo, esta vez para mi segundo hijo.
The process of hearing to support my first child diagnosed with autism, while hearing the autism diagnosis for a second time for my second child.
El proceso no ha sido nada fácil. Primero porque, como lo dije anteriormente, no sabía cómo actuar, cómo ayudar a mi hijo Jesse. Cuando él estaba teniendo un momento de crisis, cuando él lloraba mucho, cuando gritaba mucho, más alto de lo que un niño típico puede hacerlo. ¿Qué debía hacer cuando mi niño solo quería jugar haciendo líneas con sus juguetes y no quería socializar con los demás niños?
This process has not been easy at all. First, because as I mentioned, I did not know how to respond or how to help my son Hesed. What I was supposed to do when Hesed was having a meltdown, when he couldn't stop crying, when he screamed much louder than a typical child does. What was I supposed to do when the only way my child wanted to play was by lining up his toys while avoiding socializing with other children?
No era fácil ver cuando mi hijo no podía comunicarse verbalmente y yo veía la expresión de su desesperación en su cara de querer comunicarse y no podía formular una palabra.
It was not easy to see my son's face filled with frustration when he was unable to make himself understood by others, unable to communicate verbally and to articulate a simple word.
Aunado a esto, un mes después de recibir el diagnóstico de Gesed, el papá de Gesed me pidió el divorcio. Sentí que el mundo se me venía encima en la cabeza y no podía creer cómo era posible que su papá quisiera irse justo cuando más lo necesitábamos. Pero aún así, debía seguir luchando y buscando ayuda para mi hijo y para mí.
In addition, a month after getting Hesed's autism diagnosis, I was met with news of Hesed's father asking me for a divorce. I felt like the whole world was crashing down on me. I couldn't believe it was possible that my child's father wanted to leave us just when we needed him most. But I knew I had to keep fighting. I couldn't stop looking for help for my son and myself.
Cuando me dieron el diagnóstico de Gesed, también me dieron una carpeta con información sobre algunos recursos que podría ayudarnos, pero solo venían en inglés. Y entre tantos papeles encontré un tríptico del Arc of King County y vi un nombre que me parecía hispano y fue cuando decidí llamarlos.
At the time they gave me Hesed's diagnosis, they also gave me a folder with information about a few resources available that could be of some help. However, all the information I was provided was only available in English. Among the pile of papers, I found a brochure from the Arc of King County, and I noticed one of the names sounded Hispanic to me. I decided to call the Arc and speak with one of their team members.
Durante más de una hora, una de las colaboradoras del Arc King County, Patricia González, escuchó toda la historia de las dificultades por las que yo estaba pasando Y así fue de alguna manera que comencé a asistir a las clases y reuniones con el ARC de King County y me comenzaron a ayudar para conseguir algunos recursos para ayudar a mi hijo.
I spoke for over an hour with Patricia Gonzalez, a team member of the ARC. Patricia was all ears and listened to my whole story about all the obstacles I was dealing with. This is somehow how I started attending classes and meetings offered by the ARC of King County, and how they started helping me get access to some resources to be able to help my son.
Pero cuando apenas estaba comenzando a sentir un poco de apoyo en el 2017, recibo más noticias alarmantes. Un segundo diagnóstico de autismo. Ahora de mi segundo hijo, Obed. Y una vez más, comenzar todo el proceso. Los exámenes, los estudios y una vez más, un duelo más.
I was just barely starting to get ahead with some support for headset when I got more startling news. In 2017, my family got the news of a second autism diagnosis for my second child, Obed. Once again, I had to deal with the whole process, the testing, the studies, the grief.
A lo largo de este proceso, las barreras a las que yo y mis hijos nos hemos tenido que enfrentar han sido lo más difícil y cansado para poder lograr encontrar el apoyo necesario para su condición. Barreras a enfrentar como lo es el idioma, el rechazo, el racismo de las personas a nuestro alrededor.
Throughout, the barriers we have run into have been the most difficult and tiring things me and my kids had to deal with to find the needed support for their condition. Barriers such as language barriers, rejection, racism from the people around us.
Y una de las más grandes barreras a las que te enfrentas es a la cultura de tu misma familia, con la visión que ellos tienen con respecto a esta condición de autismo. La mayoría de las veces no lo aceptan. Te dicen cosas como, tu hijo está enfermo, tu hijo solo es un malcriado. Tienes un hijo así porque hiciste algo malo en el pasado. El papá de mis hijos aún no acepta que nuestros hijos tienen la condición del autismo.
One of the greatest barriers you may encounter is your own family's culture. They come with their own opinion of what being autistic means. Most of the time, they don't accept the autism diagnosis. They tell you things like, your son is sick, your son is a spoiled brat. Sure, your kid is this way because you did something bad in the past. The father of my children still doesn't accept that our children have autism disorder.
Otra gran barrera es la falta de información de recursos para los latinos que somos de alguna manera inmigrantes, porque muchas veces no podemos obtener una terapia ocupacional, por ejemplo, porque las ocasiones que intenté hablar para hacer una cita me dijeron que no había nadie que hablara español y nunca me ofrecieron un intérprete.
Another great barrier is the lack of information and resources for Latino immigrants. Many times, for example, we were unable to have access to occupational therapists. Several times I called to try to make an appointment and I was told nobody spoke Spanish and nobody ever offered a language interpreter to me.
También recuerdo que en una ocasión estaba en un hospital con mis hijos y una persona me dijo que me regresara a mi país. Ella se molestó porque uno de mis hijos estaba gritando y en muchos restaurantes y lugares públicos de igual manera nos observan y hacen guiños de disgusto por la presencia de mis hijos.
I also remember an episode when I was at a hospital with my kids and the sound of one of my kids screaming upset this person so much that she told me to go back to my country. The treatment we get at many restaurants and other public places is the same. They stare at us, They frown upon us to show they dislike my kids' presence.
En otras ocasiones nos sentimos sin derecho de pedir apoyo a ciertos recursos porque pensamos que por ser inmigrantes no podemos acceder a ellos. Y una de las más grandes barreras que estoy enfrentando ahora mismo es el sistema escolar para mis hijos.
In other instances, we have felt that we don't have the right to request certain support because we think that since we are immigrants, we don't have any rights to access them. Actually, one of the largest obstacles I am facing right now are the barriers presented by the school district my kids attend.
La escuela remota no funciona para ellos y no hay mucho apoyo, mejor dicho, casi nada, para que nuestros hijos con necesidades especiales puedan ser atendidos.
Remote learning doesn't work for my kids, and there is not a lot of support, or rather, almost no support to take care of our special needs children.
Yo acabo de estar pasando una etapa de mucho estrés por esta misma situación, porque para mí es muy difícil tener en casa 2 niños con autismo asistiendo a la escuela desde el hogar. Yo no soy un especialista, no tengo las técnicas para poder mantener a mi hijo frente a la pantalla por más de 5 horas, con la responsabilidad adicional de ser una madre soltera que necesita ir a trabajar.
I recently went through a very hard time where I experienced a lot of stress due to this situation. It is very difficult to have 2 children with autism attending school from home. I am not a specialist on the topic of keeping my children engaged in front of a screen for over 5 hours with the additional responsibility of being a single mom who also needs to go to work.
Y para concluir y ya para terminar, permítanme solamente decirles que no ha sido fácil estos últimos 5 años, han sido un gran reto para mis hijos y para mí.
And just to conclude, let me say that these last 5 years have not been easy. These last 5 years have represented a great challenge for me and my children.
Sin embargo, creo que si todos juntos y en pro de la comunidad del autismo colaboramos, podemos lograr los cambios que queremos para alcanzar una mejor calidad de vida para nuestros seres queridos con autismo.
However, I do believe that we can all come together and collaborate for the benefit of the autistic community. We can all achieve the changes we want in favor of a better quality of life for our loved ones with autism.
Samut.
Again, thank you, Adriana. Muchas gracias. So I have no questions. That was so powerful. That was such a great testimonial. I loved listening to your story. I'm sure many, many other people did. Could we have everybody else from our panel just join back with us for a minute? There's Tran, and I'll wait until maybe everybody, maybe not everybody, but I just wanted to highlight these just amazing women who are here and such strong advocates for our community, for all of our community and all of our autistic community. So thank you so much for sharing your stories and the amazing resources and all of the amazing work that your groups are doing. I can't wait to see what's next. That was going to be my question if we had more time. What are you doing next? So we'll save that for next year, maybe. So thanks for everyone who watched tonight. Loved looking at all the comments, even the ones that I didn't understand, which is, because I only speak one language, where the rest of you all speak two. And looking forward to 2021 in our Autism 200 series. We will see you in January.